Hey, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to examine if there's really a difference being a videographer in a small town versus a big city. Is video work, no matter the location, created equal? And to do that, I want to answer a couple of questions. First, what qualifies a town as small town? Next, is there a significant difference between small towns and large cities? And if so, what are they? And finally, is there a noticeable difference between small town videography and videography done in a larger city? So those are the questions. Let's get started. So first, what's the difference between a city and a town? And what qualifies it as small? Well, the obvious and first area to look at is population size. Sheer numbers is truly the biggest difference between large city, small town. But I found it kind of interesting as I dove into what really qualifies a small town from a large city. I found all kinds of designations of city, large, small, medium, urban, rural. There's just a lot there. But what was very consistent was anything below 25,000 people was considered a small town in the United States. Now, below 2,500 people, there really wasn't a consensus to what those areas were called. Some small town, some just rural communities, others small cities. And what about my small town of Clatskanie, Oregon? And yes, it is pronounced Clatskanie. We have a population right around 1,600 people. So if going back to our metrics, a city is classified as 25,000 or above, we would then squarely fall into the small town or small city category. Another way to determine whether you are in a small town or big city would be the public services provided. Are there fire stations? Is there a city hall, city police, a mayor, businesses, restaurants, grocery stores? These are prominent fixtures and parts of larger cities. So if you were to take that list, apply it to the town of Clatskanie, we have a city hall. We have our own fire department. We used to have our own city police. We have one stoplight, and we also have a regionally recognized grocery store, not to mention a national bank and a nationally recognized fast food chain. So is there really a difference between small town and small city? Is it just semantics, or is it more than that? I'm not really sure. If there is, I'd love to hear it in the comments, so please comment below and we can have that discussion. So at the end of the day, what qualifies a town as small or large? You could look at population size, you could look at amenities, you could look at services offered, and you can come up with your own conclusion. Question number 2. Is small town really that different from large city or suburban living? Absolutely. I grew up in a small town, but I also went to college in Portland, Oregon. So I spent many years in a large city. So I can say with 100% certainty that there are major differences. A few of those differences that come to mind is in a big city, you can blend in, you can disappear. In a small town, you're known. How about the traffic? In big cities, horrific. Small town, well, you might sit at that one stoplight for a minute or less. And then there's culture. You always hear about this small town feel. It's small, it's quaint, it's a close-knit community, a place where everyone knows everyone, for better or for worse. Now, a larger city has its own feels. Things are always moving. There's always something going on, something to do. And I've heard it said the city never sleeps. There's convenience. Everything you could ever need is at your fingertips, literally. Now with Uber Eats and Uber Drives and Uber whatever and all those other things, you can get whatever you want, whenever you want. Every modern convenience is at your beck and call. Now, I'm painting with a very broad stroke here, and one isn't necessarily better than the other. I've lived in both big city and small town, and I've enjoyed my time living in both kinds of places. I've known people who couldn't imagine living in a small town, and plenty of people who could never live in a big city. So it really just comes down to personal preference. Is it small town or city life that makes you feel the most comfortable and gives you the ability to really accomplish your life goals? That's the most important thing to consider as we look at these differences. My third and final question, is small town videography different than videography in bigger towns or cities? My answer is yes, I believe it is. Now, I don't have experience doing videography in a big city or a big town, but I do have experience as a small town pastor and as a pastor in a larger city. Context is different, application is different, the scope of impact is different. It's just very, very different. And I see some, not all, but some of those differences being applicable to videography. But I want to share just a few of the differences that I think are unique to small town videography. I just want to jump in here real quick and preface what I'm about to say. I'm painting with very broad strokes and recognize that this doesn't represent every person from a big city or a small town. This is just what I've observed over the years. So please, I'm going to make some general sweeping statements about these two contexts, big city, small town. I'm really just trying to point out some differences, which in turn makes videography a little different experience depending on where you're located. Your first difference is this, your clientele. There's big city clientele and there's small city clientele. What do I mean by big city clientele? Well, think of a city. What do you have there? You have these large businesses needing large marketing firms to manage their brands and their companies, which require sophisticated marketing strategies. Then you need to hire a production company that can take high-level strategy and turn it into a compelling commercial or social media ad, and it's exhausting. Now, there are a lot smaller projects to be done in a big city. I'm not saying it's just all about the big companies and all the big marketing firms and all of those things, but that generally is what the standard is and what drives the market of videography within a bigger city. Also, you have to consider that in larger cities, there generally is a higher level of tech savviness. Is that a word? Tech savviness? Tech savviness? I'm going to say it is. It's just based on the kind of jobs that are in larger cities. You use social media platforms a bit more, are integrating video, photography, just all of those things. They just have a bit more of an understanding of tech. So then you have small town clientele. Small businesses that aren't worried about big marketing strategies, but they're more focused on serving and supporting a small community. So it goes without saying that if videography was even a need, it would look drastically different. The second difference is expectations. Now this area gets me fired up because this is really the heartbeat of what my mission as a videographer is in a small town. For too long in small towns, the expectation for quality video has been very low. We have for so long been okay with poor quality both in video and in sound. I just believe that we could raise the bar in our expectations no matter what video we're putting together. That being said, the expectation in a big city for videography has always been extremely high. You have to have the best quality in both video and sound, and you will get left behind if you're not always at the cutting edge of quality. So it's my passion to see the expectations be raised, perhaps not to the level of big city. I think that gets a little ridiculous, but to a higher level. And of course, the expectations in big city are always super, super high. It's just a different, again, clientele, a different expectation for the projects that are being done. Another expectation that might look different between small town and big city is creative control. As a small town videographer, many times clients will come with an idea but not have any concept of how that can get done or all the little steps creatively to really make it pop or come alive. When you get into a larger city, oftentimes they have marketing teams that have already put together the project and now are just looking for a videographer to shoot it, to record it, to edit it, but very little creative control over the entire project. And finally, my last difference between small town videography and big city videography is pricing. Videography in a small town is often an afterthought and even considered a luxury. There's no marketing budget except perhaps boosting an ad or two on Facebook here and there. So when you pitch the idea of doing a video in a small town, you have to understand they probably have not budgeted for this kind of expense. Again, in a big city, you have companies and agencies with huge budgets. Video is seen as an everyday part of life. Bottom line, there's budgets for video and clients will pay a premium for that video service. So, in conclusion, what have we learned? Well, first, my small city does indeed qualify as a small town, in case you were wondering. Second, in my opinion, city living and small town living are very, very different experiences. And lastly, there is, in my opinion, a significant difference between doing videography as a business in a small town versus doing videography in a big city. If you are looking to start your own videography business or even a photography business for that matter, you'll want to consider what context best suits your specific style and goals. For instance, I'm not sure if you could make videography a full-time gig in a small town, at least for a while. For me, it's something I love to do in my free time, and now I've just made it into a bit of a side business. That might not be your situation. Maybe you want to get into full-time videography. Well, then you would probably want to look at joining a production company in a bigger city. Whatever you're interested in pursuing, don't allow your surroundings to define your limitations. Work hard, think creatively, and most of all, do your very best. All right, that's it for this one. See ya.